We're going to win the World Cup.
I was emotionally exhausted.
It was one of the worst days of my life.
There might have been some tears.
People saw the ACC as a threat and they wanted to kill us.
I don't even know if I want to go there, but this is a warts and all documentary, so we have to tell the truth.
Where's the cocaine? Where's the nudity?
Sex pest is a word that was thrown around.
I was actually pleasuring myself.
I knew there was a penis involved, and Laura McGoldrick.
Lee.
Absolute scenes! Absolute scenes!
Is this like season 2 of Drive to Survive, a bit shitter though?
Should we have ended season 1 with this?
Yeah, well, we ended season 1 behind the absolute scenes, and we didn't even talk about the game that actually had the absolute scenes in it, and that was the semi-final, Eden Park against South Africa. So, yeah, I think we just wanted to leave it on a cliffhanger.
What I can recall is, the semi-final, and I think because we're all massive New Zealand cricket fans, we all had that sense of we're going to bundle it again. You know, we're going to fall over, we're going to drop the ball just at the try line, and there was that real concern.
Because the story of New Zealand cricket leading up to that was always the same. It was of tragedy. It was of disappointment. It was of unfulfilled promises. Now, I know there were a lot of New Zealand cricket supporters who may have been 8 or 9 years old, and they just started watching cricket at that time, and they started in 2015, becoming conscious of New Zealand cricket. They witnessed one of the greatest moments in New Zealand cricket, and some of those kids went from 8 to 14, and at that stage, they genuinely thought that that was the story of New Zealand cricket to them. Their childhood was of New Zealand cricket victory and success, beating every team in the world convincingly. Unfortunately, that's not my experience of it.
Well, yeah, the 2015 semi-final, Cricket World Cup semi-final, by that stage we'd been thrown out of the World Cup. We were 3 weeks in exile.
It may have been covered in the last series, but a lot of controversial things had led up to that point. I had very little to do with a lot of them, but it meant we lost our accreditation. It's a bit like a taxi driver without a taxi license, or an Uber driver without an Uber license. You shouldn't be behind the wheel. And we didn't have commentary licenses, accreditation. We lost all that in a matter of a single stroke of a pen.
We were all still in shock, weren't we? I mean, I remember being outraged that we weren't allowed to be at the game, that we were the victims of a conspiracy, really, weren't we? I mean, people saw the ACC as a threat and they wanted to kill us, and that was a dagger in the heart, not being able to be at the game after having been through the entire tournament, and then for the most historic moment in the history of New Zealand cricket, to not be there. Well, I still haven't forgiven Brian Waddle or whatever other nefarious forces are to blame for that.
This seems like the climax of a period of time for the ACC. This was a huge, huge moment. I always picture this game like we were at the ground, but now I'm looking back. Were we underground?
I seem to remember us broadcasting that day from some kind of bunker.
A foul, stinky bunker.
Where was that bunker? How did we get in the bunker? Where did we book a bunker? Why were we in bunker? Were we under threat? Were we hiding? I think maybe we were part of a witness relocation situation at the point or something. Was the ICC trying to kill us? I don't know why we were in a bunker.
My recollections of the bunker is very much like Hitler's bunker in many ways.
It was the detritus of the NZME media empire, wasn't it? Just this disgusting old disused building full of used tampons and condoms and needles, I think.
So we were broadcasting from the basement of Cook Street, corner of Cook and Nelson Street.
And from recollection, it was some kind of student kind of radio scenario. There were Britney Spears posters and stuff. Not that I object to any Britney Spears posters, but it wasn't your usual setup for the ACC. I mean, generally speaking, when we broadcast, we had a much more manly environment. So this sort of threw us right from the start, I think.
I found a Robbie Williams, I think it was, and a Taylor Swift cutout, and I combined the two of them in the corner of an empty room, and I was actually pleasuring myself over that.
And I found that quite distracting.
What was my way of dealing with it? I mean, none of us were really taking the stress very well.
South Africa were absolutely smashing us. I remember AB de Villiers was just tonking us around Eden Park. And then the rain came, the beautiful, beautiful rain came.
When the rain came as well, it came in a very isolated form, didn't it?
Yeah.
It just rained on Eden Park. There was just an isolated cloud that God sent that day to Aotearoa, and he said, this is my country, God's own country, and I am going to rain on this park for you people, because AB de Villiers has been doing some terrible things in his life. And he does not deserve to be in a World Cup final, and good on God.
And basically, it ended a South African's innings, and then New Zealand was set a pretty hefty total, as I recall, with reduced overs. And I think it must have gone until about 12 o'clock at night. It just seemed to go on forever.
Where were you during the final?
For most of the previous 5 overs, I'd been over in the corner with my head pushed against the wall trying to hide from the game. I couldn't watch.
So I think there was only 2 balls left in the over. The prospect of making the World Cup final on 1 ball, it was just too much. I mean, I'm not sure if you were in there. I mean, a lot of people bailed.
I couldn't watch, and I had exited out of the building, and I was down around the lift area.
I was huddled on the ground. I think I was in a fetal position, shaking. The tension was so intense. No one would go on because no one could bear to watch or handle the tension. So someone said, "You're on." I was like, I can't. I can barely control my bowel right now, let alone getting on the air and talking.
And so when the hairy Jav launched that ball over long on for 6, all those years of New Zealand cricket pain just evaporated with that one shot. And of course, that catapulted the hairy Jav into the spotlight and the limelight.
We were like climaxing pretty much.
Absolute scenes going on there. You probably have some footage or some audio that I don't know that you'd probably cut to at this point. I have no idea whether you will.
Stein to Elliott. He pulls it into the He pulls a 6 over on, and New Zealand are through to the World Cup final. Oh, you want to read about it? The New Zealanders have won with 1 ball to spare. The hairy Jav of the land. Jav, 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 Jav.
Oh, there you go, you did. Well done. I mean, it would have been tempting to celebrate after that and go boozing, but the pressure was too much for me. I just had to leave the bunker and reflect on what had gone on. It was powerful stuff.
After the game, we needed to celebrate. There was so much energy. We were jumping off the walls. We were jumping around. There was a bunch of middle-aged men hugging, and we were in a bunker, and we were all standing in a circle, jumping around in circles. And we were like, this needs to be celebrated. We can't just let this lie.
We couldn't believe that we'd made our first World Cup final. Fuck, let's go out. We're going to go out. We're going to go out in the piss, and I've got to go out and fucking celebrate. So it was about 12:30 at night. Eden Park was packed, so 40,000 people. We thought, surely there's going to be a bar open.
I remember a bunch of us heading out to look for champagne to celebrate, and Auckland had decided, I'm not sure what day of the week it was, but Auckland had decided to completely 100% shut down. And I remember us finding the worst bar in Auckland.
It was the only one that was open. We all went in there with our stupid suits and ties after the game. And I went up to the bar and I said, can I have 4 of your most expensive bottles of champagne?
Their most expensive bottle of champagne, even on bar prices, was about $15.95.
It was the worst champagne of all time. We opened them all, we had 1 sip, and then we all went home.
I remember lying in bed and my heart was still going a million miles an hour because of this amazing victory, and I was just running it through my head. And I just couldn't sleep. And why am I alone right now? Why isn't there a ticker tape parade? Like, where's the frickin' parade? Where are the balloons? Where's the poppers? Where's the cocaine? Where's the nudity? Why am I in bed by myself, just under the covers with my heart going at 1,000,000 miles an hour?
Did the ACC call the final?
No.
No, we didn't call the final.
I was like, of course we'll do the final. We followed the whole thing, and then it's like, I talked to Jeremy. He goes, "Oh, me and G Lane have got tickets to the final. We bought them about 2 years ago. We've got flights. We're out." I'm like, "What? You're out?"
Oh, I'm sure there were some people who could have called it.
Those that could afford to fly to Australia for the final had already made up their minds they were going to do that, and they let the rest of the team go. So the whole camaraderie, the whole esprit de corps of the commentary team was lost at that moment.
It was when we were starting to see a few cracks coming into the team there.
There was a raft of other reserves and recruits who could have stepped up at that moment.
I got so frustrated that I started tweeting, dangerously steamed in a bar, just these terrible profanity-filled tweets at this bar.
We were resentful, and we just gave up, basically. We gave up on our audience, let's be honest.
So that release we had as a group, we were in the huddle, we were in the caravan, we were in the womb of the caravan, and we could behave the way we could, and we had the support. Then, just on my own in the public, just unleashing like I had been for the whole tournament, but no mic to unleash into.
How was the final itself?
A huge disappointment. Within the space of the first over, I realised that New Zealand probably weren't going to win. But leading into the game, some of the greatest moments of my life, and I remember them very, very clearly, walking towards the MCG with ACC head G Lane and Paul Ford, New Zealand's premier sports journalist, and chanting and singing, "We're going to win the World Cup." That's right, we were singing songs. And you could hear other people. You'd sing a first line, and then all of a sudden you just hear these New Zealanders off in the distance singing their line.
He's got a dick so long, so long, so long. He's got a dick so long. Here comes the jab. Here comes the jab.
Hope, the optimism then, only to be very, very quickly dashed within the first over with Mitchell Starc taking the wicket of Brendan McCullum.
And it just sucked the oxygen out of the stadium. It was an amazing atmosphere. But I think that was when we lost it, and I think the most heartbreaking thing was the next day when I got up dangerously hungover on the streets of Melbourne. It was about 40 degrees, and I walked straight into the Australian team parade. It was one of the worst days of my life.
You mentioned being hungover. So did anything eventful happen post-match?
Post-match? I'm trying to rack my brain. What happened post-match?
There was a penis involved and Laura McGoldrick.
Oh, shit. Oh, God. So we were in Melbourne and we got invited to the Black Caps after party after the final, and we shouldn't have gone.
Well, the after party is always a bit different when you don't win. There's two ways I like to deal with games like that. There's one way I like to deal with games like that, and that was just drinking through. So I was on a similar level to you, but not maybe as hot. But you came in steaming hot.
What ensued, I don't know, where you turned up and it wasn't really an after party. It was more a conference room that they'd booked in the hotel, deadly silent, with chairs around the outside of the conference room with friends and family, and a buffet in the corner and a bucket of beers. Let's just say we stuck out like sore thumbs.
We didn't read the mood of the room, I don't think, looking back on it, quite as well as we could have. We'd come in very hot after what was 2 days of massive partying. I don't know if anyone had had any sleep. I certainly hadn't.
From what I've heard from my Australian contacts, made absolute asses of themselves.
So it's a bit of a blur, but the things that I could take away from that were chatting to the chairman of New Zealand Cricket.
Jeremy did have some thoughts and feelings about how New Zealand cricket would best to push forward with a few things, and he felt that that was the right time in which to do it.
And who can forget as well that there was a moment where we started chanting pash the jav, and
I cornered Grant Elliott and tried to pash him over the buffet.
I have the photographic proof, actually.
I saw full mouth-to-mouth action.
Grant Elliott, I'm not sure if he was into it. I don't think he wanted it, but he went along with it, to his credit.
Sex pest is a word that was thrown around.
What's the wristwatch?
For legal reasons, I can't go into that.
ACC head G Lane wrapping his downstairs operation around his wrist and getting members of the New Zealand cricket team and their wives and partners to look at, he'd say, what's the time? Do you want to know what the time is? And then they'd look down and then he'd have his downstairs around his wrist.
It's to say, Tim Southey made me do it.
I had some pretty firm instructions from my husband that it might be time to head off.
The Cricket World Cup was over. What effect do you think it had on Kiwis and how they viewed cricket?
Wow, it was the renaissance. It was the beginning of the renaissance for cricket in New Zealand. Like, it was Baz McCullum, it was Bazball. He was leading a team that didn't give two fucks. They just got into it. And like the next 2 or 3 years was a sensational period for New Zealand cricket.
I will never forget that little window. What a great time to be alive as a New Zealand cricket fan.
I think that it just probably either started the love of the game for a lot of people or revived the love of the game for fans who had, if you'd stuck at it and you'd loved them as long as you had and you'd ridden the highs and lows, this was a great moment for us cricket fans. So I think it was just all about the love of the game, either getting new fans or thanking the ones who had stuck in there.
It basically got people who were relatively interested in cricket into cricket.
I think we realised then that the key to New Zealand's success in cricket was more South Africans. Who would have thought?
Where the fuck am I? What the